Welcome back. All right, so Minnesota. We're up to Minnesota, and sadly, at the time I'm recording this, we do not have a resolution to the Kirill Kaprizov situation. So that would affect my prediction. If Kaprizov doesn't come back and play, I'd have them pegged as sixth in the division. I'm assuming he signs and stays, and I'm predicting them for fourth. But it is one huge storyline still out there in an offseason that still has some huge storylines out there. Hello, Jack Eichel. And so what happens with Kaprizov, that's your big concern right now if you're a Minnesota fan, right? The difference between the team before and after Kaprizov, it's not even close. This is a team that was exciting to watch this past season when he was on the ice. This was a fun team to watch. And Minnesota has not always been a fun team to watch. Very often they've been one of the most boring teams in the league that's been both on the ice and seemingly off the ice too. Like it's just been sort of treading water with Minnesota. And with Kaprizov, it felt like things were finally exciting. They were getting good. And we'll see whether or not they can get back to that this year, right? So, their special teams this past season, their power play was awful. Then it was fantastic. Went back to being awful. Then it's good. I don't know. But it ends up 17.6%, which was 24th, which is low. However, it was sitting at 4% for a large portion of the season. It was bad. So 17.6 is a lot better. Their penalty kill, 80.8%, which was 12th overall. Not too shabby. So the Minnesota Wild special teams numbers should get better this year, as long as they can avoid the kind of issues they had last year on the power play. Their goals for 180 this past season, which is 9th. Their goals against 159, which is 15th. And so middle of the pack, right? However, as I've said, with Kaprizov, the first big name superstar this team has had in a long time. And I've seen the comments along the lines of, well, he didn't even have a point per game. Yeah, it's his first year, and he's close. And he's a dynamic player. So we'll see how things go. Now, with notable draft picks since 2015, that 2015 draft turns out to be pretty influential in this team's history. Eriksson Ek is the number 20 pick. He emerged as a number 1 center this past season. Greenway, a number 50 pick. We will talk about their center depth before this is done. Kaprizov, number 135. Russians drop in the draft. That's just the way that works. And right now, the holdout and all this discussion of him maybe signing a 1-year deal in the KHL, that's kind of part of why GMs get a little bit nervous about drafting Russian players early. Luke Cunning was drafted 15th overall in 2016. 2017, they did not have picks in the first 2 rounds. They drafted Mason Shaw at 97. Notable because he signed a contract a few days back. Philip Johansen was drafted 24th overall in 2018, a draft where they had 2 Johansens. Matt Boldy was drafted 2019, 12th overall. And then Marco Rossi's drafted 9th overall in 2020. Of course, he's been dealing with the after effects of having COVID last year. And so he's supposed to be good to go and ready to play this year. We'll see whether or not, after losing a year of production, or a year of development, whether or not they put him in Iowa for the year and say, okay, we'll put him in the AHL and let him have his time. I would lean towards that. And then Kuznetsov was drafted 37th overall. Great name. Really hope he comes over. Wallstedt, of course, was drafted 20th overall this year. Notable because Jesper Wallstedt is seen as being a fantastic young goaltender, and that should be the next number 1 for Minnesota. And then they drafted Carson Lambos at 26. So I thought they did well in the first round this year, having multiple picks and all that. And we'll see how it pans out for them this coming season. But their drafting, not awful. But again, you'll notice there aren't a lot of late round steals on this board here from Minnesota. Left the team, Bonino, Suter, Parisi, and of course Suter and Parisi, both of them bought out. Didn't create very much cap space for after this season. We'll see how it all turns out. Susi, Johansen, and Cole. And that's Marcus Johansson that has made his exit. He's off to Seattle. New faces, they've added Goligoski and Kulikov on the blue line, and Freddie Gaudreau up front. So we'll see how things go for them with these changes. But basically, It all comes down to whether or not Kirill comes back. That's the big thing. Everything else is kind of window dressing. They have to get Kirill to come back. So over their last 3 years, they were 37, 36, and 9. In 2018, 2019, they were 7th in the Central. No playoffs. 2019, 2020, they finished 35, 37, and 7. 6th in the Central. Due to the expanded playoffs, they got into the qualifying round where they lost against Vancouver in 2020. 2020, 2021, they finished 35, 16, and 5. 3rd in the West. And they lost in round 1 against the Vegas Golden Knights. A series that ended up being far more exciting than Vegas fans would, or the Vegas team would have wanted it to be. So there's a lot of reasons to look at Minnesota right now and say, you know what, this could go either way. They could fall back out of the playoffs. And again, the Kaprizov question is there as to whether or not he's in the lineup this season or whether or not he just goes or just holds out. But there is the possibility this team takes that next step too and finds themselves in a pretty good spot in the Central. And who knows, maybe they go on a run. It's been since 2003. It's the last time Minnesota went on a run. And it's the only time the Minnesota Wild have gone on a run. So their forward group, down the middle is where there's a problem, right? So you've got Greenway, you've got Eriksson Ek, Foligno. Eriksson Ek likely the first-line center. Rask may very well be the second-line center playing with Kaprizov and Zuccarello. That's where he was last year. Now, if Hartman's down the middle, Sturm down the middle, it's, again, there's no star power down the middle, really. You've also got Fiala, who just signed his contract, Bjugstad, Rau, Goudreau, and then you've got Cramarosa, who likely would be the 13th forward, Dewar, Mason Shaw, and then there's Boldy, and I do wonder, so Boldy drafted in 2019, where does he factor into this lineup? Does he get the 9-game treatment, or does he play the full season? So we'll see how things turn out, and does Boldy coming in, and maybe Rossi as well, does that help to offset if Kaprizov doesn't play? It's a lot to ask. But there's some really exciting young forwards on this team added to a defense that's pretty solid. Brodin and Dumba headline the defense, along with Goligoski, Spurgeon, Kulikov, and Merrill. So there's a lot of veteran depth here, but they've also got Addison, about ready to jump into regular work. I'd be surprised if he didn't. And then you've got Mermis, Suzman, and Hicketts, who are, guys you can bring into your lineup. You can play them in the top 6 for a week if you need to, and you don't have to worry too much about getting them through waivers to get them back to the minors. So it is an interesting, it's an unspectacular blue line, but it's competent. And up front, I still have questions about the center spot, which Bill Guerin last year said he was going to fix. And the first thing he did was get rid of the centers they had, and then they brought in Johansen with the idea that Marcus Johansen would be the answer down the middle, and it just didn't work. Marcus Johansen's, it's always been a question mark for me with him when he's put at center. I think he's just better on the wing. Goaltenders, Talbot, Kakkonen are going to be the guys, and then there's Andrew Hammond in the AHL, who, of course, everybody remembers as Hamburglar and all of this wonderful stuff, but really his career has been mostly in the AHL, and I would expect that to remain the case this year. Their prospect list is interesting. So you've got Marco Rossi, who may very well find himself here. But again, because he missed the entire season of development, I'm going to go out on a limb and say he probably doesn't make it into their lineup right away. Maybe he ends up working his way into it, works his way up from the minors first. Again, you don't want to rush him in, right? Philip Johansen, Carson Lambos, both of them defensemen, and Marat Kuznetsov, who again may end up being a steal in the second round in 2020, which is a pretty good draft. So, yeah, their prospect list isn't bad. Overall, things look pretty good. But this is a team and a fan base that they're done with the idea of being middle of the pack. They're done with the idea of just building to the playoffs. They're out in the first or second round. They need a run. So the Cup odds right now for them are actually pretty good, 22-1. They opened at 20-1. They've dropped to 22-1. So that tells you that there are some people who are putting money down that Minnesota wins a Cup. And I would guess that a lot of the people saying, oh yeah, maybe it's Minnesota's turn, it may very well be for Kaprizov. Seeing him and how he played in his rookie season. If Kaprizov signs in the KHL, if he says, you know what, this is all whatever, I'm just going to go home and think about things, I would think that the odds of them winning the Stanley Cup would probably go more into the 40-1 kind of range. So I do predict them to be fourth in the Central because I am making the assumption that they will work out whatever they have to work out, get Kaprizov over, get him signed, and make it all go away. So their October schedule, they're on the road for 5 out of 8 games. We'll see how it works out for them. They start the season in California, in Anaheim on the 15th, and then in LA the night after that. So they've got a back-to-back there. Then they come home, they play Winnipeg on the 19th, so they got a couple days off before that. Then they have a few days off before they play at home against Anaheim. So 2 of the 3 games they have against Anaheim to start the season. First 4 games, they've already got Anaheim 66% of their way done with them. They only play each other 3 times. And then they're at home against Nashville the next night. So they have 2 back-to-backs in their first 5 games, but they have some nice days off in between. Then there's 1 day off before they go to Vancouver and play in Vancouver. 28th, they're then in Seattle, and the 30th, they're in Colorado. So this stretch here, from the 23rd to the 30th, they play 5 games. There's a back-to-back, and they don't have more than 1 day off. So it is kind of a tough schedule travel-wise. But when you look at the overall schedule, they've got Anaheim twice, as I said, LA here, Vancouver here, and Seattle here. Those are what you would call winnable games. Nashville, winnable game. So it's possible Minnesota gets off to a good start this year, which could be huge, especially if they aren't able to get Kaprizov to come back. They need to get off to a really good start. But again, I have the assumption that he will play. I have the asterisks there just in case he doesn't. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below as always. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe if you're browsing your way through. You just happened upon this video. Thank you guys so much for watching, for all your support. I will talk to you again soon.